adoption of operationalization of the decision, and what we call the enhanced transparency framework and the reporting that participate will spur a better attention or improve attention to reporting loss and damage. Let me start with what UNDP is doing in relation to reporting and tracking what we call adverse effects of climate change. That's one of those decisions that were made during the COP and also the previous COP. One here is that at the moment, UNDP, in collaboration with the World Bank and the EU, and we know that in Nepal we have done this earlier, we are involved in leading and coordinating the post-disaster needs assessment for catastrophic events. And this is one avenue where we can report and track damages and losses in relation to the big catastrophic and extreme weather events. It's important to say this because through the post-disaster needs assessment, reporting and quantifying the cause of direct and indirect effects of early warning extreme weather events in 18 sectors are being undertaken by different disciplines. We work, for example, during the Nepal Gorkha earthquake, well, 18 sectors were assessed, and for UNDP, what's also important to highlight is that we are involved in ensuring that resiliency building or the Build Back Better approach is incorporated into addressing the impact of disasters. And that's something that we can, of course, scale up and replicate with climate impacts. The other thing that the post-disaster needs assessment is able to achieve in the recent PDNAs is that we are also able to see the human impacts of a catastrophic event, which means we're also able to track the losses and damages to people, including the lack of access to services when disasters happen. So I think this is one proposition where we can, of course, we're not hoping for a disaster, but this is already a methodology that works in at least 70 crises that happened where PDNA was applied since 2014. The second proposition that we hope we can also pursue is that UNDP, in collaboration with governments, including governments that are represented here, such as Nepal, we are able to help establish national disaster loss and damage databases in almost 36 countries. Now, DLD, of course, reports disasters, but it's a very good foundation for reporting climate loss and damages with some adjustment because they capture long-term events such as 30-year history. They capture information about hazards. They capture information about effects to population, international protocols that aligns and the associated SDGs. So we have two methodologies that are well implemented in many countries, and we're hoping we can replicate this. But they are not sufficient. They're not sufficient with what is referred to in the convention. And this is where I think the taxonomy for loss be a proposition that you wish for us to collaborate with. We know that loss and damage will increase in magnitude, in frequency, in intensity, and in numbers. We also know that despite of the mitigation and adaptation, communities will suffer from loss and damage despite of investments in mitigation and adaptation. But also in the context of the HKM, loss and damage also occurs when adaptation has not been optimally implemented because they are not affordable, they are physically difficult to implement, such as in the Himalayas. And there are, however, synergies that can be achieved where both adaptation and addressing loss and damage can happen at the same time because for many communities, they actually happen in the same temporal scale and the same geographical scale. So what I'm communicating here is that adaptation, mitigation, and addressing loss and damage, the recent decision, actually a continuum. Now, the taxonomy helps because some communities and countries may be vulnerable at the characteristics of loss. But more importantly, the communities are actually very different in terms of context, no? There are social groups, there are indigenous people, and may be of higher risk of adverse consequences of climate impacts and may experience loss and damage earlier than the others. Think about the HKM and the mountain. Will the mountain residents suffer more or earlier than other population at risk to climate change? So here is where we are proposing working towards understanding better the three domains that will contribute to loss and damage. And some of these are very familiar with you. Working with IIID, we are already consulting with your countries and co-creating a taxonomy that can hopefully highlight that communities are diverse, countries are diverse, and therefore solutions should be, but also should be are the predisposing factors, geographical characteristics, income, livelihoods, and then the second one are the precipitating factor, the topic of this COP, the climate drivers, what are the triggers. These are discussed in the decision. We refer to them as low onset event, extreme weather event, and their impacts such as economic and non-economic losses. And finally, which is the topic for discussion, are solutions. Solutions matter. This is what we call protective factors, elements that contribute to resilience against climate impacts. These are disaster risk reduction, community-based adaptation, early warning system, anticipatory approaches, social protection to covariate risk. So I thought that I would offer to you a proposition that's more concrete. These are things that we could do together, and I look forward to implementing this. And hopefully we can work together of bridging policies into local action. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for presenting this taxonomy of the factors and the solutions. And that's exactly how we're going to frame the discussions for the panel. I will call to the stage our distinguished panelists. So we have Yoko Watanabe, who's the Director for Environment of the Asian Development Bank. We also have Karma Toeb from Bhutan. We have Dr. Arun Shrestha from ICIMOD, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, which is our partner in organizing this event. Dr. Baran Upreti, the Climate and Resilience Thematic Lead from Practical Action Consulting Asia. And Ms. Nusrat Nasab, Chief Executive Officer of the Arakan Agency for Habitat from Pakistan. Oh, sorry, because you can leave it like this, actually. So first I will ask the first question to Dr. Arun Shrestha, who's the Strategic Group Lead on Climate and Environmental Risk at ICIMOD. Dr. Shrestha, what are the most common climate-induced risks to human security, especially related to water and energy in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region? And can you also mention some of the potential solutions? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Julie, and thanks to everyone being here in this event jointly organized by UNDP and ICIMOD. First, I would like to start with, talking about what kind of changes we are already experiencing in the system. Already, in the video, and then very elaborately, explain what kind of changes we are already experiencing. Going into a little bit of detail on it. Now, I'm going to quote quite a lot on the Highwise report, the Water Ice Society and Ecosystem in Hindu Kush Himalaya report that came out earlier, which has a very good in-depth review of what's happening here. So what we see is that the warming is quite strong. The warming that we are experiencing is quite strong. And the magnitude of warming happening is almost double of the global average, which is very, very significant, right? What is happening with the cryosphere has again been elaborated quite a lot. What we see from this report is that in the decade of 2010, the mass loss, ice mass loss, glacier ice mass loss has been about 65% more than in the previous decade. Similarly, precipitation change is also happening, more intensive rainfall, particularly in the high elevation region, which is not normal. Intensive precipitation in high elevation, and then liquid precipitation, and sometime rain on snow is happening. And this kind of precipitation is not common in high altitude landscape, which is normally very fragile. So erosion is happening. So in terms of impact, the crisis, what you said, is manifests in generally in terms of too much and too little water. Mostly the water scarcity issue is in the headwater regions where water is mainly provided by meltwater. And more acutely in areas where monsoon is not strong, like the inner valleys like Dolpo and Mustang in Nepal, and then Karakoram and Hindu Kush in western part of the region, right? But as we go downstream, the monsoon is more, monsoon is much stronger and water is supplied by there. The other effect, the too much water is also there because of receding glaciers. Many glacier lakes are forming and bursting out, which we call glacier lake outburst flood. And then also because of intensive precipitation, there are a lot of erosion, landslides and floods happening, right? So this is what we see in terms of changes in the system, the climatic system and hydrological system. Now, going to the second part of your question, what it means for water and energy. Water, I have pretty much talked about what is happening. But then when it comes to energy in this region, if you are going away from the traditional energy, the energy system is largely dependent on water-based energy, hydro energy. And many of the countries, including Nepal, Bhutan, and also Pakistan are having a very ambitious plan on utilizing the hydropower potential. But then what will happen to those plants, I think that needs to be looked at quite seriously from the climate angle, right? With the hydrological changes happening, the extreme increasing, I think definitely the energy system will not be unaffected. So what we see is that although at a larger basin scale, the quantum of water available in average over a certain time period is not likely to change so much in the future, right? I think that's the point to be noted. At smaller scale, at headwaters, it is going to be acute, but at a larger system, I think that's not going to be a big change. Although the seasonal and interannual variabilities and spikes, spikes meaning extreme precipitation resulting into extreme, flood conditions is projected to happen more and more. So these are going to have definitely some serious impact on the energy system. And we already have experienced a lot of challenges in the energy system. For example, the Uttarakhand 2021 February case, which wiped out 2 hydro power. Then, 2016 transboundary Gulf event originating from Tibet. Very small Gulf event, but totally devastating Botikoshi hydropower. And very recently, this year, October, Sikkim flood from Lonak Glacier Lake. It was a Gulf event. Wiped out Tista 3 dam completely. So this is just an example of, what could happen to the energy system. So looking into the future, I think these challenges have to be looked at. Should I stop here, or I think I can come back, later if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll turn to Mr. Toeb from Bhutan. If you can tell us a bit more specifically what is happening in your country and what are the specific factors in Bhutan that are driving losses and damages.
Thank you UNDP and ISMOD for providing me this opportunity to share our experience with you all. I will not highlight on what already Dr. Arun has highlighted because we have a similar situation in Bhutan. But because of the loss that we are incurring on the cryosphere, basically we are worried on two aspects. That is one from the water resource point of view, the other from the natural disaster point of view. So in terms of water resource, we have done a study in Bhutan to analyze the melt contribution to the surface runoff in the major river systems in Bhutan. So the results are quite alarming actually. On the average, the range is from 33% to 49%, although this may vary in time and space. But what is more important is what Dr. Arun has already highlighted, the seasonal variability. That is more important for us. Because if you look at Bhutan is considered to be one of the richest water resource in the eastern part of the Himalayas. So if you look at the number, is around 94,000 liters of per capita water in the region. But we should not be happy with this number because that is I think the contribution mainly by the major river systems which basically drains at the bottom of the valley. And that does not benefit the communities which are living on the slopes, which is more common in our region. So that will only benefit the hydropowers. And our economy, yes, we understand that hydropower is one of the main backbone of the economy in Bhutan also. So that is how vulnerable we are in terms of water resource in Bhutan. There are instances, springs are drying up, spring sources are drying up. There are number of cases that I can cite. But on the other hand, what is happening on the disaster is also similar to what has already been mentioned by Dr. Arun. We have 17 potentially dangerous glacial lakes. And in the recent years, we are seeing that the frequency of all these GLOF events are increasing. So in 2015, we had a GLOF event in one of the river basins, followed by in 2019. And very recently in 2023, October, just before we came here, we had a small GLOF event. But the magnitude may be small, but we need to see the frequency of occurrences. If you look at the history of GLOF events in Bhutan, the frequency was not that high actually. So in the recent times, we are seeing more of such events occurring. I think that is more important for us to notice. So in terms of in terms of the problems associated with the climate change on the cryosphere, so these are the few things that I can highlight in terms of Bhutan. I'll stop here. I think we have more discussions later.
Thank you very much. Now I will turn to Yoko Watanabe. If you can tell us a little bit more about this new initiative launched by ADB on the Hindu Kush Himalayan initiative and how this is aiming to address some of these challenges.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation by UNDP and ISMOD for this really important event on an International Mountain Day today, and congratulations to all of us for the important milestone. So first of all, Nepal particularly, I've started working as a first station that I worked with was UNDP Nepal Country Office. And since then, we've been working with ISMOD very closely on the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. And I really feel like, coming back to talking about the Hindu Kush initiative at Asian Development Bank as a new director on environment, this is a real great pleasure to see what we can do together moving forward based on the initiative that we just launched last week. So what we have done last week was basically we announced a new initiative on the Hindu Kush Himalayan initiative, which is really to build adaptation and resilience in the region where we are talking about such a serious, hazardous effect that is going on with the glacier, with the water flow, with the changing climate. And what we are trying to do under this new initiative is basically based on the current reality that we're facing in the region. We're basically trying to say that these economic losses that we are facing since the 80s and, exaggerating the whole initiative is coming to a total of 45 billion impact to the region, and we really need to address this from economic and environment and social elements moving forward. And what we really recognize is that this is a region with 240 million people in the mountains and 1.65 billion people downstreams, and we share many river systems downstream, and this is a really important area that we really need to tackle moving forward, particularly from a priority from Asia region, where Asian Development Bank is really present and trying to support different countries. So basically what we're trying to do here is to call for awareness raising and capacity building, and also understand the risk and risk management solutions moving forward. And what we have tried to do is in three folds. So one is to really combining the cutting edge risk assessment and risk assessment tools so that we can also think about insurance and risk transfer and really come up with a guide on how we can further invest in these regions, understanding the risk and also mitigate the risk as we move forward with large-scale infrastructure development that are planned in these regions. So first of all, the first element of this initiative is forefront of the work is measuring the multi-hazard risk and the compounding effect of climate change. And what we are trying to do is we're not only going backwards and seeing the damage that we have historically seen, but there are now new modeling tools that we can use and predict what is happening in terms of hazardous risk, and we can map it out and come up with a technical assistant that can see the assessment and then come up with a viable solutions, particularly in terms of policy development and then also investment in terms of infrastructure and other initiatives, including green and green economy and supporting SMEs on the ground. And the second thing that we're trying to do is based on these modeling and hazardous mapping, we are going to be designing infrastructure that considers the risk management approaches and basically design these more in a more viable manner. So the multi-hazard risk sort of assessment and prepare the early warning systems and incorporating protective measure in the design of infrastructure will reduce those risks, and we can develop also insurance schemes that can sort of diversify the risk among different actors. And I think there are many ways that we can bring in different financiers of the large-scale infrastructure and think about these risks more in depth and come up with a set of standards and determine good practices moving forward. And the last bit that we're trying to do under this initiative is really come up with a creative way on how these can be financed further. We've been doing different initiatives all along the past 20 years or so, but I think this is around time that we all come together and understanding the risk and then bring in the needed sort of financial facility, including insurance and other private sector investment towards including grants and concessional resources to do this in scale. And we have been working in Asian Development Bank different thematic bonds like green bonds and actually even species bonds. And we're talking with UNDP recently on the tiger bonds and other initiative. Snow leopard bonds is also actually on the table as well. And we can figure out how we can mobilize new way of innovative financing resources to come in. So finally, we really think that starting in Bhutan and Nepal, first of all, we can draw important lessons through this initiative and then scale up to the regional level as we move forward in multi-country efforts. And so ADB really look forward to working with ICIMOD, UNDP, and others and try to see how we can advance these initiatives that we've been tackling for many years. But this, I think, is a really momentous timing with a loss and damage, as Sani mentioned, to really move forward to a next level and a next scale. So really, thank you very much again for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Moving on to also more specific solutions, I will turn to Dr. Ubretti to ask you about early warning systems and the role that you think they can play in addressing these challenges. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And it's a really pleasure to be here on the International Mountain Day, being from the mountain communities. And we have been working save lives of the mountain communities through the solution as an early warning system. So let me start from what is the role of early warning system. Even if we give 24-hour ahead of warning to the communities, those who are exposed to hydrometeorological hazards, that could help saving at least 40% of lives, loss and damage of properties, infrastructure, and so things that are connected with the livelihoods of the people. So that itself demonstrates how the the early warning system is really important in the context of increasing climate risk in the mountain area. For example, there are a number of hazards coming up. Sometimes erratic rainfall, as Dr. Arun mentioned earlier, our rainfall trend is shifting towards mountain and Himalayas. That has really demand strong early warning system, a strong early warning infrastructure in the mountain and Himalayas. We don't know what amount of rainfall, what amount of snowfall is occurring in high mountain that could trigger any kind of disaster to the billion of people, those who are living in the downstream of communities. So community-centric, end-to-end early warning system that is science-based should be communicated in a tailored way. That means simplification of early warning system, simplification of the message that are generated by science to the communities, means from physical science to community science or citizen science relationship is really important for fostering early warning system, mainly particularly in the area like Nepal, that are exposed not only a single hazard, but we are exposed by multiple hazards. Sometime even in 2021, just an example, the government declared, like the Met authorities elsewhere in the regions declared the exit of monsoon in 11 of October, and then the new system, Western disturbance, started coming up from 13th of October, and then that hit in a way that we never expected. That flood of 2021 that damaged billion of the crops that is ready to harvest in the Torai region of Nepal. So these are some couple of examples. And this year, while the entry of the monsoon, 9 billion Nepali rupees lost in a energy infrastructure in the Koshi province of Nepal. So there are number of evidences that we have that has a cascading interrelationship. One interact with others and impact a devastation to the communities, to the infrastructure, to the livelihoods. Melamji event 2021, that is another example of the hydrometeorological hazard that we faced. And then Manang, we never realized that amount of flood that comes from the high mountain areas. So early warning system is really important. We need to invest not only giving early warning message, but it should be multi-hazard early warning embedded with impact-based forecasting system. That means it is connected with science to communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also thank you very much for emphasizing the impact for local communities. And that's a good transition to Mrs. Nusab, who will be talking a little bit about the role that local communities can do and the type of actions at local communities level that can be also scaled up and supported by governments.
Thank you, UNDP, ICIMOD, and Nepal for this opportunity. I think coming here or finding this particular place was not less than climbing a mountain. But for sure, like we are working for the mountain communities and for the coastal area as well. The local community, I think it's their role, and that's very crucial in the success of achieving climate resilience or for a future or sustainable future. Um, change issue itself, for sure it's a common issue, but then find out sectoral approach only possible that particularly in terms of environmental stewardship, and also they bring indigenous knowledge because they've been there in the areas for multiple many years, and combining that with the scientific knowledge and innovation, it's very important. Now when it comes to particular communities, each and every community, I think, in the world, they are facing certain issues, especially due to climate change, and it's very obvious. From Pakistan, for example, last year's flood was so obvious. 1/3 of the country was underwater. 33 million people were affected. Same case happens with a glacier lake outburst flood. Even last year there was this Shisper glacier. Due to that, not only the infrastructure but also many people were displaced. People lost their livelihood. So it is there, but then the last point it comes is, and that is men in the community, is more of a self-help thing, because if they want to help themselves, then the other multi-stakeholder could really come together and help them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions for the panelists, but I also first want to open the floor to the audience if you have any questions. I don't know if there's a...
Hi, this is Lal Mane, student of water science, and I am affiliated with New Mexico State University. Thank you for the very well informed discussion. My concern is, like, we are losing the snow is, for us mountain people, is losing water. So we are discussing so many things from different kind of adaptation, including the insurance, and all these things are very important. But my major concern is, like, first and major question is, we are losing water. So what should be the interventions to hold those fresh water from being degraded for reaching the being like salty water? So what kind of interventions we can introduce in our region just below the snow cap? So for example, we can have our soil also have some kind of capacity to hold the water. Have we tested our soil capacity to hold the water? That can be one of the buffer to hold our water from being lost. So is there any interventions or any suggestions to hold our water in our territory? Thank you.
Thank you for this very interesting question. Does any of the panelists want to answer this?
I can try. I cannot promise. It seems like you have a very good idea, actually. This concept of holding water within soil itself it's something sounds very innovative. Like when we talk about storages, there are different types of storages, and we immediately think it is reservoirs, right? But I guess we also need to be innovative in that area. Yes, the key issue is to hold water in the source as long as possible, right? So what are the ways? I mean, ponds, reservoirs, etc., is there. Traditionally, it is done, but then holding it in soil seems to be another because it actually, in a longer run, it emerges as springs. It percolates. Deep percolation goes to aquifer. The shallow percolation also becomes a quick runoff. Ultimately, it is added to the system and it becomes springs, right? Either spring and then to the stream flow. So I think that probably is a way. And then, how can you do that? It's basically enhance the interception and infiltration. So there are different mechanisms to do that, and vegetation is one, and there could be other like check dams and other thing. So definitely that's an area. But the bottom line is, I think we need to be very innovative going forward in terms of solving water scarcity issues. Maybe Ms. Nusrat is better placed to talk about, because we have some experience also in Pakistan where it is very arid area. In eastern Himalaya we are still lucky because we get monsoon, right? But in Karakoram it's very arid. So water scarcity is a big problem there. Now because of receding glacier, the irrigation system which have been built over hundreds of years are dysfunctional, right? So hydro ramp pump, which is not a new technology, but it is still useful to draw water from deep streams. Normally streams are deep, and the settlements and the agricultural lands are at a higher altitude. So the water in the stream is really useless. So how to bring it up? I think these are some of the things which can be done. Simple technology, hydro ramp pump, but very useful. Thank you. Do you want to add?
I think it's a very good question, but to me, like, water has to flow. So there are different methods to really, preserve. The objective is to preserve the water. So you can make a circular economy in a way that because we have tested that and it works very well for a community. If there is a source and the water comes, it again goes to the main chamber, and it's really a good way of doing that. But then there are some innovative methods at other places. For example, this rain harvesting is an area where there is water scarcity. You can do that. I think there are areas where there is fog, for example. So fog nets is something very innovative we can do. And I think with the technology, things are coming really, easy also. Another one is this solar, solar-based, let's say, you filter it and you provide the drinking water in particular.
Thank you very much. I'll take one other question before we close. So maybe I'll ask one question as a panelist to each give one solution to scale up those solutions that we've been talking about today. If you had one major one to recommend scaling up.
Maybe others should talk. I guess I talk quite a lot.
Okay, let me start from one that Lalmani has asked one. There are a couple of solutions because we need to invest really the indigenous solutions that could help and fulfill the needs of the local communities. So that is really important. Early warning system that I mentioned, one of the important aspects, but how to use the early warning system itself, the another ways of solutions. For example, we have developed index-based flood insurance for the communities, those who are exposed to flood. So when a river, flood in a certain river cross the certain threshold, for example, in a working area where we have implemented this index-based flood insurance, Karnali River, one of the largest river of Nepal, when that cross 10.8 meter, that is the danger level of that Karnali River, then community is entitled to receive 15% of the subsidy that they applied for the insurance product. So when the, the river cross like one level up, 11.8 meter, then 12.8 meter, and then 13.8 meter, and that goes up, 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 and then 14.8 meter or above, community is entitled to receive 100% of subsidies, and the insurance company pay, because everything's assessed prior to the event. So early warning system, if that is connected, if that is reliable, generate evidence from any river system, we can also use such type of applications. The use is on paddy. It could help, the destruction of paddy. That I give you example of 2021, when the farmers about to harvest paddy, that lost. So if the community is devised with early warning system or this type of index-based risk transfer mechanisms, that could help communities to protect themselves, to protect their assets, from like, I guess that everything loss is, that communities, there is no options. But if we could devise some, the risk transfer mechanisms, not only risk reduction mechanism work in the era of climate crisis, so risk reduction and risk transfer, if we could bundle together, that could help resilience. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you very much. So I wanted to kind of highlight two things. One is solutions in case of, using digital more solutions, first of all, to really predict those unpredictable risks that we are talking about, because with the vegetation data and also the meteorological data that we do have, there are different modeling sort of techniques that we can really employ now and figure out some of these early warning and different sort of systems that we can predict and get prepared for these risks. So I really think that using more digital solutions and data, mega data that we already have is one of the key solutions. And then the second one is the financial solutions. So in order to incorporate some of these risk factors into infrastructure and also economic activity does require upfront financial sort of additional resources. And to do that right now, I mean, there is different modalities that we can think about. One is, of course, more of a grant and concessional loan type of things to be added and have a more blended finance towards, more a higher interested rate loans and others, so that we can really incorporate those risks up front in the design of these infrastructures and also economic activities like agriculture, tourism, and other factors. But at the same time, as I mentioned, there are many innovative financing that we can employ. So again, the thematic bonds are actually a really interesting mechanism that we are utilizing in many other natural resource management technology, like, as I mentioned, tiger bonds and snow leopard bonds and other things. So by employing all these different financial mechanisms, we can definitely scale up more. And I'd really want to see a scale-up version, because we've been talking about this since mid-90s. And, baby steps of improvement, of course, is being made. But I think this is around time that we put in private sector finance more and really scale up these initiatives, considering how important this is for the downstream economic activities and social activities that are happening in the region. So thank you.
I think we need to let go the conventional way of, doing things. So it should be more smart, more innovative, and, it should be context-specific solutions. One thing I really want to highlight is, of course, like the multi-stakeholder, they bring, as we talk about early warning finance, or, the scientific knowledge, or especially the policy and the national, climate adaptation plans. But above all, it's about behavioral change. That is with everyone. And I think be it, with the climate change issue, be it the water issue, in each and everything, I think the behavioral change, it really plays a key role, because one has to start from self, and then, you can really empower others, you can really inspire others. That's what I can say. Thank you.
I think monetary compensation is one thing. More than that, I think we should, when you talk about the impact of climate change, it all boils down to saving lives and property. So that is where the early warning, I think, what Nepal has already highlighted, is one of the more important aspects of those solutions. And when I say early warning, I think the early warning for all initiative under the UNFCCC framework, I think that is a good initiative, but it has to be customized to take on board all the individual countries' needs and requirements. So that is other one. So other thing that we can think of is, especially in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, data gap is a very important part that we are facing as a scientific organization. Not only data gap, but also data sharing mechanism. That is one of the very important aspects, I think. So for that gap to be closed, I think WMO has already initiated that SOF scheme, which is a very good scheme for us. I think we need to scale up that kind of scheme in the region to close the data gaps. And the most important, I think, international and regional collaboration in the association with easy access to climate finance source. I'm not talking about those loans and all those things, but there are schemes. But to access that one, the present ones are quite bureaucratic in the process, which takes, like by the time the proposal approves, our priority changes. So that, I think, needs to be looked into. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're a bit out of time. I'll just call on Dr. Pem Kandelt to just say some closing words and thanking participants.
Thank you, distinguished participant and panelists and all the ladies and gentlemen. As you know that this event on tipping point for third pole communities has been jointly organized by Government of Nepal, ICIMOD and UNDP. The HKS comprise 4 billion kilometers square and extended from Myanmar to Afghanistan is known as the third pole because it reserves the largest size of snow and glacier than after the two poles. So this is very important. And also source of water, food and energy. For 240 million people live in the mountain and more than nearly, I would say that nearly 2 billion people live in the downstream. So it provides the ecosystem, goods and service for about 1/4 of the humanity. So how Hindu Kush Himalaya region is important. So impact of climate change is higher in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region that we listen from the panelists. As a result, glaciers are melting. So that is the reason why glaciers are melting. As a result, climate-induced disasters have become the phenomenon every year. Flood, landslide, every year. So it has become the phenomenon in this region. What is happening in the HKS and how it is, impacting in the downstream have been already discussed and presented by Dr. Arun Upreti and other panelists. So I don't like to repeat the same thing here. Then looking forward to the solution, then how we can, resolve or address the agenda or issue. 1.5 degrees Celsius is higher. Even 1.5 degrees Celsius is higher and 2 degrees is too high for this Hindu Kush Himalaya region. So that is the important voice that EC mode is supporting, facilitating to its regional member country and other network to raise here in this climate COP. So this is very important. Without reducing the greenhouse gas emission and controlling the, limiting the, temperature target 1.5 degree, it is very impossible to prevent the glacier melting in the future. Impact of climate change are already there because temperature has already raised, so impact is there. Therefore, adaptation, building resilient, and compensating loss and damage are the agenda of the region. So we have to discuss on those issues. EC mode is building network to raise common voice in COP28. EC mode is working continuously here and there in the region. So we'd like to request you to collaborate on the common agenda. So climate-induced disaster of the region have transboundary implication. You have already mentioned that. It has transboundary implication. There is cascading effect of climate-induced disaster in the region. EC mode is working on that. EC mode is very much working. Arunji is leading that part. So scaling of early warning is necessary because we have to communicate with the community, with the people, with the other part of the world. So this is very important tools that EC mode is supporting for the same. Climate finance is another area that we have to work. So without finance, how we can implement our nationally determined contribution, national adaptation plan. So finance is the big issue. EC mode is reviewing the multilateral environmental agreement in the region. Preliminary result, I am leading that because I am the chief policy advisor there. So my work is to look at the policy, how the policies are working. So preliminary result shows that there is a big financial gap. In the region, there is a 75% financial gap to implement the nationally determined contribution and national adaptation plan on an average. So in a country like Nepal, there is only 13% fund flow from the donor agency, bilateral and multilateral agency and the government. So that is big gap. We need more than 86%, for example, for Nepal. For India, maybe 60%. So average, on an average, there is the 75% financial gap to implement the nationally determined contribution and national adaptation plan. So that is the big message that we can. So EC mode would like to join the hand to its RMC, regional member country, donor community, private sector. So private sector involvement in climate change effort is very much important because they are also part of the emitter. So they have to contribute for the mitigation and adaptation as well. So multilateral and bilateral funding agency to fill the gap. So national government has also put the money because the study shows that the climate change funding should come from the outside. All funding cannot come from the outside. So this is the issue. This is the major issue of the country. So we have to push the national government climate change and even loss and damage. So the direction that we have to convince to the national government and private sector as well. There are few more areas need to be reformed. So there are few. So as mentioned, there are data gaps and data sharing. There is a gap in data structure, data availability, accessibility, and sharing. So that is the big area that our study also shows that in the area, though EC mode is providing data and information, based policy decision and planning, but the gaps is there. So there is that UNDP, we are here, all the partner. So we can think on that area also. So capacity development is another dimension, another area where we need to work. Institutional capacity, professional capacity, climate change is a big issue. Capacity of the community. So we have to look at the different scale and scope of the capacity development. So that is the area where we can improve the situation in Hindu Kush Himalaya region. So development, I think Nepal, it is good news that Nepal has already started the, green, resilient and inclusive development. That means integrating, I see the friend from the Ministry of Finance, integrating the climate change into a development endeavor. So striking balance between the climate change and other development endeavor is very much important. So this is the area that I think we have to and to put the money to make it adapt. So that is the another area where we can work in this region. And of course, there are a number of policies and institutional gap. So we have to look at the policy and institutional reform. So our study also provide a lot of recommendation to review on existing policy, because we have to transform the economic system. We have to transform the economic system to align with climate change. So therefore, number of policy and institutional reform is very much important. Another good news is that Nepal has already loss and damage, national framework on loss and damage. So I think tomorrow global framework will come, I think, with unfolding about the loss and damage. Loss and damage is there, funding arrangement is there, provision is there, something written about the institutional setup, but unfolding, unpacking is very much important. Let us hope that will come by tomorrow, provide some guideline and also talk about the subsequent guideline. So after that, I think Nepal's national frameworks need to be reformed, and also other countries. I'm talking about the practical, policy reform. So this is very important that Hindu Kush Himalaya region and other region also, we have to review the policy and also look at the framework of loss and damage. So that is very much important for the region. So finally, climate change is the big issue. We can make different if we work together. No individual, no single institution, even single country cannot make difference. So we should work together. Let us collaborate to protect the majestic third pole and mountain community together. Finally, one of the important things, I think we have to communicate. We are starting to communicate. Let us not forget that sea level rise and cryosphere melting has a very big interconnected relation. We have to communicate that how mountain protection of cryosphere, protection of mountain is important to keep sea level, to protect the southern country, island country. So that voice is very much important to build more network and to raise the common voice to protect the majestic mountain. So I think with this, I would like to thank you for your contribution, for your participation, and I would like to end my few words. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the government of Nepal for hosting this event in this pavilion. Thank you very much.